champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, I'm Si, and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation. On the channel, we've got podcasts, interviews, and content on all sorts of subjects, from MMA, boxing, football, music, writing, acting, conspiracy theories, and much, much more, including my story and unscripted and uncensored. This is the Danny Batten Fight Show, episode number 22. And today, there's no current boxing or MMA for us to talk for the first time in a couple of shows. So we're back to talking some retro stuff. And we have Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson. I nearly said Tyson Fury then. Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson. That's because I was literally just thinking I would have liked to have seen Lennox Lewis versus Tyson Fury. But Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. And then we'll also talk a bit of UFC 8 and part 4 of our look into the rise of Jack Shaw through the ranks of Cage Warriors and up to his UFC debut. And I'm sure we'll see him fighting again soon. Joining me to discuss all of the above is former Cage Warriors champion, Mr. Danny Batten. How are you, my friend?
I'm all good, Si. Ready and raring to do another one.
Indeed, I'm looking forward to it, mate. And we've also got Shane Watson from S.E.E Boxing. But he's just popped out of the stream. He'll be back in a minute. Good week, mate?
Yeah. Pretty much, the same. Didn't have as much to busy myself with, but it gives me time to do other things, in regards to like relaxing and stuff.
Yeah. Any news on gyms and stuff in England then?
Not really. I mean, we put most of the things we can in place, so that when they do give us the go ahead to open in some form or some fashion, we got most of the things that we think are going to be required of us in place. So we try to create a one-way system to use the bathroom, cleaning stations, I think the last thing that we can do, once we spaced apart the machines, which most of ours are, luckily we've got a really big complex, is to also put some form of cleaning on top of each bit of equipment. And the martial arts, who knows? That's another thing. I don't even know really whether they'll directly address that. I don't know how they're going to go about it. It's going to be interesting, certainly. But yeah, just getting the gym open would be a start.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just trying to wait for them to make a decision. I don't. Unfortunately, their decision making seems to be quite reactive rather than proactive. So I think you might be waiting for a bit. Joining us is Mr. Shane Watson, the operations manager for S.E.E Boxing. How are you, my friend?
All good, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on again.
It's all good, mate. I'm looking forward to it. I like talking a bit of retro boxing, a bit of retro MMA. Mm-hmm. I got a show coming out with Shane. It's probably going to be out on Friday. So this is our Wednesday. So it'll be out on Friday. We talked a bit of everything, really. We talked boxing. We talked a bit of MMA. Talked a bit of everything. All sorts of stuff. But it was a good fun show. And you were supposed to be interviewing Evander Holyfield this week. Didn't happen in the end, mate, did it?
Right. The issue with this is, right, so I was meant to have Evander Holyfield on the other day. I've got his phone number, right, and honestly, this is what he does every day. He will text me at about 8 o'clock in the morning, like a whole, like about 8 paragraphs of quotes from the Bible, right? And it is so random. Like, we've never met each other. We're not mates or anything. And he'd be like, "Have a great day, sir," at the end. I'm like, if it's 8 o'clock in the morning here, it's about 2:30 in the morning where you are, mate. What is he doing? He's like saying good morning and stuff. And then he sends me really weird voice notes as well. And other really weird, like, not really weird, but like whatever, like very personal religious videos.
Yeah.
I'm like, we haven't all of a sudden just become friends, Evander. You had with me the other day and you still haven't done it.
Yeah.
All this time to send me these weird messages. Weird.
There you go. But so have you got a date set now for that, or is it wait and see?
Yeah, so it's going to be what day are we in now? Sunday. Yeah, Thursday, I believe, next Thursday.
Nice,
So I'm doing one with
definitely,
I'm doing one with Tyson Fury tomorrow, actually. So
oh, that'll be good. That'll be a wicked one.
and Peter Fury later on. So that'll
Is
be
it?
good.
Nice. Peter
Mm.
Fury's
I'm
legendary
not
at
going
the
to link
moment.
them together because I understand the obviously family conflict and stuff. I'm not one to try and twist things in the
No.
family, but yeah, it just conveniently does fall on the same day.
Yeah.
More than
Yeah,
anything.
you go. That'd be good though. That Tyson Fury would be a really, really interesting one because it's just got such an amazing story. Like, so
Yeah, it will be. I want everyone to tune in on this one because it will be very interesting. I'm going to go quite deep on the old, rather than talk about boxing side of it, because everyone knows that, and everyone's got an opinion on it. I really want to go deep more on the mental health side of things that he went through. I
yeah,
don't
man.
think people have gone in an interview with him, have gone too deep into that with him,
Mm.
like real deep, and seen into it. Like, obviously, we know some of the things that he was going to do, where he said he was going to drive his car through the wall. Funny
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
it was actually my brother that insured that car. Funny
No
enough,
way.
but yeah. So that's a weird story, but yeah. Also, yeah. So just things. I want to go really deep on that more than boxing itself, really.
Yeah, man. That'd be really good. Do you know what? Little quick story. When I first started the podcast, like about probably coming up to 18 months ago now, I was depending on people I knew as guests and stuff, or friends of friends. And so I would contact people just randomly, see if with a bit of luck they might agree to come on. Like they'll almost feel sorry for me, give a guy a start or whatever. And I DM'd Tyson Fury's Twitter page and said, "Look, I do some podcasts on mental health. I'm only just starting, so I know it's like a massive long shot, but would Tyson come on and speak?" I didn't even expect a reply, and I think it was I would assume his manager or his social media guy. Like they messaged me back and they were like, "Look, he's doing a lot of stuff at the moment with documentary and this and that," and just basically just said, "Look, maybe at a later date, but thanks." And like I just thought, do you know what? You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to reply. You didn't have to, even give me the
What is this
time of
on his
day. Like,
personal Twitter page or MTK's Twitter page?
I'd have to have a look. I think it might have been MTK if I think about it,
Yeah,
but
they're
I'd
quite
have
good
to.
on there. They're quite good on.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't fault them, like, because they didn't have to do that. Like I had literally, I think at that point I probably had about 10 followers and 10 subscribers or something. I was just trying my luck. But yeah, that story. But yeah, so we're going to talk the boxing first. Lennox Lewis versus I keep saying Tyson Fury. Lennox Lewis versus Mike Tyson. Interesting fight. Danny, what did you think, like just general overall thoughts before we go sort of round by round?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I felt like we didn't see like a peak performance by Tyson by any stretch. It just looked like he was not firing on all cylinders. This could also be the fact that maybe Lennox Lewis had really learnt his craft really well and learnt to use that long reach and that height that he had. I mean, he was a pretty tall boxer back then. Today, it's quite an average height, but back then he was a pretty tall dude. And maybe he'd perfected his craft really well, which made made Mike Tyson, less effective. I just think it was a shame that we didn't see them both at their peak, and that seems to be the story a lot in boxing. You don't see those great matchups when they're really firing on all cylinders, and unfortunately we've been robbed of knowing what might have happened if Tyson was, really on his peak performance. Yeah, he just looked a little flat to me.
Yeah, it was interesting. I watched the post-fight interview just now, literally before when I was just kind of getting ready to come on, and Tyson said, I don't know if he must have taken the fight on relatively short notice, because he said, I would have preferred to have three fights before this. So I don't know if he was kind of coming back from a break or something. Off the top of my head, like, Shane, what did you make of it, like overall?
So if you look at the whole thing, the build up to the fight as well, Tyson had lost that fight even before he went to the ring. He was the whole build up was crazy. I mean, if you're a boxing fan or you're a casual fan or whatever you are, you don't even have to be a boxing fan. You probably watch the fight anyway. It's like galore. Like you love that, like the whole name calling, squaring up, chasing after him to the other side of the stage. So I think Tyson lost his head, as we've seen many times in his career, before he got into that fight, and I think that's arguably one of the reasons why he lost the fight, because he looked like he didn't seem like he was prepared at all. You can do that when at the lower level opposition that he was beating, because he was on a 6-fight winning streak before that fight, I believe, against like second tier opposition.
Yeah.
You can get away with it at that level opposition. But when you're stepping in there against an elite heavyweight, and arguably, no, not even arguably, a top 5 heavyweight of all time, in Lennox Lewis, and that's any of the world level boys. That's not just Lennox. You're going to get found out at the end of the day, because these guys, every little thing you can get on one another at elite level could be the difference between winning and losing. And Mike Tyson, he just wasn't there, man. His head wasn't in the fight at all. He wasn't in the fight week. He just looked like he wanted to rip his head off. And when you go in there with that mindset at that level, especially as I was saying before we came on air, we had a quick 1 minute talk. You go in there against someone who was an exceptional jab and who was exceptionally tough. If you watch Lennox Lewis against Shannon Briggs, yeah, Lennox Lewis's chin, I know he got knocked out by Hassie Matman and Oliver McCall by big one punch knockouts, right? But he is exceptionally tough. And Shannon Briggs, who's one of the biggest heavyweight punchers of all time, laying bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb on Lennox Lewis, and somehow he's still standing. I do not know.
Yeah.
And you'll see that he's very tough. So it was going to take a lot more. Mike Tyson was going to have a lot more in his locker to beat Lennox Lewis, and just being very tough and hard hitting. And like I said, his head wasn't in the fight at all. It was very one-sided. Very good knockout by Lennox Lewis as well. It ended it in emphatic fashion, as he usually does. And it's a shame, really, because it's almost like, when everyone says that you can't really ever get a good name in your record these days, or any days, without them saying, well, this guy was slightly out of his prime, this guy was slightly out of his prime. And I think that's the bracket that Lennox Lewis falls in for most of his big victories. And it's a real shame, because it's not his fault that Mike Tyson didn't train properly. So why should his win get crushed because Mike Tyson didn't dedicate himself in the gym? So that's because he trained so hard, he doesn't get the credit because the other one didn't. And that's the thing that I have with that, really, is because Mike Tyson wasn't old enough to be out of his prime, but if he decided not to take the sport as seriously, or his mindset was in the right place, you can't then say that Lennox they didn't beat the best Mike Tyson, because at the end of the day, Mike Tyson should prepare himself to be the best Mike Tyson to go into a fight.
Yeah,
you can't credit another guy's victory for that.
Yeah, it seems harsh, doesn't it, to tarnish Lennox Lewis's victory over one of the biggest names in boxing, because Tyson did.
Let's pretend Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua fight, right? And that's a proper. They say right now that's a proper 50-50 heavyweight dust up, right? Both in their primes or whatnot. So if Tyson Fury turns up to that fight well overweight, 22 stone, yeah, doesn't look like he's trained, look like he's just here for the paycheck, even though we know that won't happen, but hypothetically speaking, and Joshua beats him, you can't then go and say, oh, they've just beaten overweight Tyson Fury. At the end of the day, you're still beating an elite heavyweight who is at the top of their game or whatever. If he chooses to turn up overweight, that you can't discredit the guy that did turn up in shape and was ready to fight.
Spot on, mate. Yeah, it's gone, Dan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I think the main people who get robbed, as well as Lennox Lewis not being able to say he beat a supposed in peak Mike Tyson, is really the fans. I remember during all this era being really excited about this matchup, and I was, really disappointed with what I think would have been a more interesting bout had we see a more switched on Mike Tyson. But yeah, you can only fight what you're up against at any given time, and it's up to the fighter to always be in shape. When I decided to retire from the game, I didn't want to stay in it and lose because I was getting too old, or where I knew I couldn't prepare as well as I was getting older. Your body picks up injuries, you get more hiccups in your training prep. I knew that was going to lead me to lose fights, and I didn't want it to be that way. I'd much rather come out when I knew I was over the hill and it was just beginning to taper away. That's really how I remember it back from that era. It's just being a bit disappointed. I'm like, wow, I thought it was going to be real fireworks, and the fireworks just wasn't there. That's how I saw it.
Just quickly before I go on to the first round, we watched Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. And obviously Joe Calzaghe gets that kind of accusation thrown at him a lot, that he fought fighters.
Yeah, he's another one. He's another sufferer of that for sure.
But like,
Yeah.
how could like you can only beat what's in front of you. So whether your opponent is of a certain age or whether your opponent is not preparing properly or not taking it seriously, that's not your fault. That's not your problem. You've got to just do your job.
Yeah,
Do you know
Lennox
what? On
was
Joe
chasing
Kozaki,
him for
though,
years. Sorry.
do you know on Joe Kozaki though, right? That it's people mustn't research really what they're saying when they say things like that, because if they really looked into Joe Kozaki's record, they will see that he beat a Bernard Hopkins that was still world champion 7 years later in his home country, right? Now, I'm not being funny. Bernard Hopkins is now the oldest world champion ever. And he, I believe, I could be wrong on this, I think it was 47 or it was 48 that he retired. He lost to Kovalev, but in the fight before, but he went into the Kovalev fight as WBA and IBF champion. So he was a unified world champion at the age of 47 or 48. And he fought, I think, Kawasaki maybe 10 years prior to that. So to say that he was over the hill was ridiculous. If anything, he was aging like fine wine. Bernard Hopkins was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people can't use that comment. I mean, the Roy Jones fight is the only one I would say that he wasn't at his best, and even Joe Kozaki admits that himself.
Yeah, of
But
course.
Joe Kozaki can't all of a sudden make himself 10 years younger. Unfortunately, it's just the way that the sport is. But even bar that, Joe Kozaki's got many other great wins. He beat, okay, maybe not a prime Eubank, but still a very good Eubank. He beat the way he beat Jeff Lacey is one of the best British boxing performances of all time.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on. Mikhail Kessler, he took Mikhail Kessler's a prime Mikhail Kessler, who ended up beating Carl Froch and had a very close second fight at the end of his career with him as well. And Mikhail Kessler beat many great names. Great fighter. Definitely a top 10 super middleweight of all time as well. So, like, you know, I mean, people can always pick at people's records all the time, especially when you're undefeated. Look, Floyd Mayweather gets it all the time as well. Guys, 49-0 in boxing terms. I'm not going to count the Conor McGregor fight, but so even then, you'll get people that pick up your record, even though you're going to get people that are slightly past your best, maybe a slightly weight drained. But that's the fight game for you, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but Bernard Hopkins, he won the IBF light heavyweight title in 2013, and again in 2014 when he won the WBA super title.
Yeah, because he unified against Shimonov.
Shimonov, yeah. So like he was 48 and 49 when he won those titles, and he retired.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I just saw that I've gone off the page, but I think he retired at 52. So like he was still going well after Calzaghe retired.
Yeah, because he fought Joe Smith Jr. in his last fight. I don't even know why he did this. But the WBC put a special belt on, as they always do, because WBC love to get involved in everything, put random belts on, and which I'm not a big fan of. But and they put him on against Joe Smith Jr., which was an absolute disaster, because Joe Smith Jr. is not a very good fighter, but he punches like a mule, and he's so tough. So almost anything you wouldn't want to fight when you're 52, like he ended up getting punched out of the ring, didn't he? And that was it.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, he fell out of the ring. Yeah, like you say, people like to pick up people's records, don't they? But at the end of the day, you're talking, I think, Lennox Lewis, like one of the top 5 heavyweights of all time, easily. And I don't even think that's a dispute. Like, I don't think that's up for dispute. But
I mean, I actually have him at number 3, but I don't want to. But where the top 5 can be, you can almost like reorganize.
Yeah, you can interchange them, can't you?
I say top 5 because it's just you can't really not put him in the top 5. That's why I say it, really.
Yeah, and I think Calzaghe as well is like, you know, he's one of the greatest of all times. Like for me, I look at like Calzaghe and Mayweather, and I just think if you're going your whole career and you're going undefeated, like you could argue with Mayweather's case. I know some people argue that, you know, some of the people he's fought maybe aren't top tier, but you know, he's won all the titles, he's held everything. He's top of his game, same as Calzaghe. Like, how can you say they're anything other than some of the greatest boxers of all time? I find it really bizarre that people are so desperate to like prove otherwise, almost. Right, okay. Lennox Lewis, Tyson Fury. Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. Danny, first round. What'd you make of it? I thought it was hectic.
Yeah, it was. I was really supposed to see Lennox Lewis sort of lock horns with Tyson. Really, to be honest, you know, Lennox for me is almost ploddy. He really likes to control the pace, but he looked like he was really up for the row, and to meet him force on force. I was really surprised to see that they gave him that first round. When they was talking in the commentary, and I couldn't see it. I still feel like Lennox Lewis was doing a crisper work. It looked like Tyson was really struggling with his range. He was either too far out or so far in. He was getting lent on by Lennox Lewis, which I think was a good strategy for Lennox Lewis. He was using that really tall frame and that heavy size of his to take the sting out of Tyson's tail, which is predominantly in those first 4 rounds, I would suggest, where he's at his most dangerous. He's doing the right thing by leaning on him. I mean, Tyson definitely looked lively in that first round, and it can make you rub your hands together, thinking that you're going to get that sort of fight that we expect from him. But that first round where he had that sort of energy and vigor, it was that round and no other round as far as I was concerned. But I still would have given that round to Lewis, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought maybe Tyson, but I was surprised with Lewis's kind of outlook on the fight. He did go in, and he was mixing it up. He had a couple of really wild swings. There was one really wild right uppercut from Lennox Lewis, and it missed. It ended up missing by quite a way. But I tell you, if it had connected, I think it would have taken Mike Tyson off his feet, because it was just you don't see many it was like a haymaker almost. And then they hugged it out a bit towards the end of the round, but that first sort of, I'd say, minute and a half was just wild. They were both swinging. They were both getting stuck in. It was fascinating to watch, because obviously I haven't watched this for God knows how many years. So I watched it this morning, and I was expecting fully for Tyson to try and get in the pocket and just bring Shane back in here now. I was expecting Tyson to try and get in the pocket and hit him with some big shots, maybe work the body. And I was expecting Lennox Lewis to sit behind his jab and just, like you said, control the pace. And that first minute and a half, Lewis seemed quite happy to mix it up with a couple of wild swings. The referee, by the way, did my head in the whole fight, which we'll get to.
Terrible referee,
and even the commentators, like the last few fights we've watched, Dan, where it's been a British fighter versus an American fighter, I've watched them with American commentators, and they are very one-sided towards the American fighter. But there was one guy on the coverage which I watched. He did not like Mike Tyson at all, and he was really slating him, he said, so the one guy said, Lennox Lewis has just been leaning on Tyson all the way. He's not boxing. And then the other guy just went, well, he's been punching the crap out of Mike Tyson for the whole fight. Then it's like cracking. But Shane, what did you make of that first round? Were you surprised at the pace of it?
Do you know what? I am. I was and I wasn't. The reason why I'm not is because sometimes fighters would like to feel almost the best of what a fighter can throw, and they usually do that early on. One example I can think of, and this is a really random example, I don't know why I'm going to use this one, but we will anyway. David Haye against John Ruiz for the WBA heavyweight title. As much as it wasn't a very good fight, and John Ruiz was well past it, you see John Ruiz almost stands in front of David Haye, which obviously would be a bizarre thing to do. But he's what he did, and he takes David Haye's best haymaker. He goes down, and he gets back up, but fine, not bothered. It's almost like he wanted to feel what the best that he has, and then you then set the pace for the rest of the fight, knowing that's best what they have then. And that does happen a lot with fighters early doors. It doesn't happen all the time. It does happen often, and it's probably a little bit with the hype that went with the fight in the fight week. And all that, he probably did get up in Lennox's grill a little bit and thought, do you know what? Okay, well, I'll go and have it with you and show you that I can do it your way a bit as well.
Yeah, I think there was definitely an aspect to that, because, like I said, I'm watching the post fight, like the guy interviewing him asked Lennox Lewis. He said, you were really upset by some of the stuff that Tyson had said in the build up to the fight. Did that impact your game plan? And you could see, well, like we've just really said, like Lennox Lewis perhaps didn't do what we expected in that first round. And maybe that was a bit of, right, we're going to have it because you've been a bit of a dick in the, in the build-up. But it didn't take long. I think after that initial sort of minute and a half, 2 minutes, they kind of, Lewis lent on him a bit then towards the end of the round. And then that second round, I felt like Lewis settled into a pattern and a game plan then where he was, to be fair to Tyson, by the way, in the fight generally, he took some big shots and, he didn't go down really till later on in the fight. Shane, did you give that first round to Lennox Lewis or Mike Tyson? Because I know the announcers or the TV guy gave it to Tyson, I think. Danny said he gave it to Lewis.
What did I watch? So the first? Oh no, I gave that to Lewis definitely because I just felt like the cleaner shots were coming from Lennox Lewis. I felt like the work rate was better. I just feel like it was better run. A lot of the times, commentary do this all the time, and this is why sometimes I don't watch fights. I watch them live, but without the commentary on, I'll turn the volume off. Because often punches that are not actually landing clean, so like gloves, arms, and stuff, they will score rounds or things like that. And the art of the sport is to hit and not get hit, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they instantly forget that as soon as the fight starts for some reason. And and they're supposed to be experts. You think they wouldn't ever forget it because it is like the one rule of the sport, really. But and they so yeah, no, definitely Lennox Lewis. But it's one of them ones I wouldn't really argue too much the other way if they gave the other way. It's a close round, but I would definitely pick Lennox to win the round. I thought Lennox won every round fairly comfortably, if I'm quite honest with you. So
yeah, definitely. Dan, what was the fight we watched the other day where the fighter it was like literally 12 rounds to zip?
Was
that
with the boxing?
Yeah, was it the Kawasaki fight?
I think it was Kawasaki.
Yeah, we watched.
Was it with Bernard Hopkins? It was that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, so we watched it like a Joe Kawasaki. We watched Hopkins and we watched the Roy Jones Jr. fight. But I think it was the Hopkins fight. Kawasaki won like 12 zip easy. Like I felt like it was really comfortable to score the rounds, and I think there was only one round where you could argue maybe the other guy had won the round, but the announcers. They gave, I think, the first 2 or 3 rounds the other way.
Won it in the end.
Yeah.
It's a split decision against Bernard Hopkins. Yeah. It's controversial. Yeah, you get that away from home, man. Wasn't it Adelaide Bird again as well that did it? I'm sure it was, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Worst judge ever. Honestly, how that woman gets such a good paycheck after every fight. I mean, it almost has to be a coincidence that she gets paid so well. Like,
she's still going, yeah.
Yeah, she's the one who messed up the Canelo Triple G fight, the first one, didn't she?
Was she? I didn't realise it was her.
Yeah, that was her that done the awful scorecard. Where I think didn't she give Triple G 1 round or 2 rounds in the whole fight or something ridiculous like that? Like honestly, that woman, she's one of the most respected and biggest judges of all time. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, I don't know one fight that she's judged fairly. Honestly, like that woman. I don't know if she's watching one of the scraps in the crowd or something when the fight's going on, and that's maybe maybe there was a ginger geezer in the crowd fighting another like brownie geezer or whatever, and she was scoring that one. I don't know. But yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah, she gave. I think she gave 10 rounds to Canelo or something, and 2 to Golovkin, and the fans were like proper pissed off.
Thing is, she's one of those judges where fighters, if you know she's judging, you'll believe you've lost a fight even before you've gone in the ring, and that's the problem with people like that. Like, I don't.
That's got to be a distraction, mate, haven't it?
Yeah, I mean, they say about putting judges in a room with a TV, so they haven't got crowd influence and all that. But I don't really believe that because there also comes a lot of problems with stuff like that as well. Like, I just think you need people who know the sport inside out, that have got no connection between any of them, and let them judge a fight. Like, because you don't even need to be a boxing fan, a hardcore boxing fan, to tell it how close a fight is or who wins a fight. Yeah, if it's a close fight and one fighter gets the nod, then that's fair enough because it's a close fight. You can usually there'll be close rounds. You can pick them either way. But if a fight is so one-sided and it goes that way, honestly, it just almost makes me think like you must be corrupt or something. Like, what is it? Like, what is it?
Do you know? I always ask like fighters, MMA and boxing, this question. But do you think it would be better to have ex-fighters be referees, judges, to kind of people who know the sport in and out, inside and out, to be able to judge these cards, properly, because there's nothing worse than seeing an absolute banger of a fight go full 5 rounds in MMA or full 12 rounds in boxing, and then the scorecards just be ridiculous for whatever reason, and it ruins the whole fight. Do you think it would be better to have, like ex-fighters be the judges and referees, Shane?
Yeah, I think for sure. In British boxing, we actually do have a lot of judges and referees that are former fighters. You've got Ian John Lewis, who's former Southern Area champion. He's a very big boxing referee, one of the biggest in British boxing now. You have Terry O'Connor, another one of the biggest. He's the one who done the controversial scorecard for Hughie Fury against Joseph Parker. I mean,
Okay.
even then, another again experienced heavyweight in the past does a dodgy scorecard. There's a 118, 110 scorecard, which it never was. And it's not always if you're an ex-pro or if you're an ex-trainer or whatever. It doesn't always mean that. And that's even more dangerous, because if it's an ex-pro or whatnot, there's going to be cases where they're going to know other pros and they could be closer to them than what they are to others, or they might have an agenda against one, or they might have an agenda against that pro fighter's trainer or something like that. And that's the risk that comes in with those kind of things, really. And like I said, pro or not, or former pro or trainer or not, they all make mistakes. Like Ian John Lewis has stopped plenty of fights too early. But he's also done some great ones as well, digging out Ian John Lewis. And Terry O'Connor he's a referee as well. He's done some very poor stoppages and he's done some very poor judging as well. But he's also done very good ones as well. So it's not a dig at him at all.
Yeah. Cool. All right, and Dan, round 2, mate. What you got? What'd you make
round 2. Yeah, you could see Tyson. I'm sorry, Lennox Lewis was getting Tyson almost like in a tie clinch. I don't know whether you notice that he's actually leaning with both his forearms onto his shoulders, and then he would give him a shove. He's always shoving him away. And I think this was, again, a part of his game plan. Maybe it stopped Tyson perhaps being potentially really dangerous, breaking free from that clinch and trying to clip him with the powerful hooks that we know that he's got. So I know he's leaning on him and pushing him away in a specific type of way. As an observation that I think, was that part of his plan? This is something that he was, thinking that would be a good strategy to try to weigh down on Tyson. And also, you'll see in this uppercut, he was really feeling that out. And I felt like this is going to be a tool that he felt would lead to a stoppage at some point. Because that uppercut would look really dangerous. It was all jab and all uppercut. And I think that was the first inkling that was going to be something that was going to be playing a part in the fight in a big way at some point.
Yeah, like we mentioned about Tyson gassing out a lot in his fights. And I wonder whether Lennox Lewis was using the leaning on him with both arms, particularly just to add that extra bit of fatigue into Mike Tyson's game. Because, Lennox Lewis is such a big guy. And the other thing was I noticed straight away in the second round is Mike Tyson was quite often stretching to try and hit his punches. So he was almost off balance. So you felt like if Lewis was able to catch one of those big uppercuts, he probably would do some damage, because Tyson felt like he was always on the stretch and almost, off balance, which is not something that you'd necessarily associate, with Mike Tyson. He's got a great body movement and balance. Shane, what did you make of round 2? Oh, sorry, go on, mate. Sorry, Dan.
I was just going to say, Tyson looked like he was forced to jab more than he would normally as well, which, to me would indicate that he really was struggling with that range and trying to find a way in. Normally he'd just bob and weave his way in, but that wasn't working for him. And he was having to almost play a jab game along with Lennox Lewis, which he was never going to win.
Yeah, for sure. Shane, what did you make of that second round, mate?
Well, I believe after the first round, Lennox Lewis would have suffered with the hairdryer treatment from Emmanuel Stewart. And you could tell that he definitely did. So a very much different, I think, Lennox Lewis in the second round that he started to use, which the tactics I'm sure would have been in the Kronk gym. Fire the jab, lean, use your size advantage. The guy is a tiny heavyweight. Don't mix and get involved. And he started to see it a bit more. And a little bit like what Danny just said, it was a bit surprising, a bit more what I saw from Mike Tyson in himself, actually using more of his technique and skill off working off the jab more than getting involved. I don't know if that was initially a trick, if that was a mind game trying to work it to try and get Lennox Lewis to think, well, maybe he is coming in with a different style. He's worked on something different for this camp. I don't know if that's what it was. Because obviously every fight that you would go into against Mike Tyson, I'm assuming that every fighter would be paired for someone just to come and brawl with them rather than a guy to work off the jab or anything like that. So I don't know if it was that. Or I don't know if maybe if Tyson was feeling the effect from the first round. The work from the first round. Maybe he's thinking, I know that I can't go out to brawl and to try and take Lennox's head off in this fight for the first 3 rounds. What happens if I gas? Like it's all these. You could put all these factors into it, but yeah, it's another very I wouldn't say another very clear round because the first round you couldn't say it's very clear. Although I did give it to Lennox, but I think a very clear round for Lennox.
Yeah, I think so. I thought Lewis was very settled in the second round, whereas the first round I felt was quite hectic.
He looked comfortable, didn't he? Very comfortable.
Yeah.
And there's not many people that can say that they ever got into a ring with Mike Tyson and looked comfortable. And
he just looked settled, didn't he? He just looked like proper. As soon as his coach or his trainer finished talking to him after that first round, he just came out and it was business. It was just all the game plan was in place, and he never really looked at any point after that in any trouble. He never looked as if he was too worried even about getting caught by that big shot. It was just, he was just doing his thing and doing his game. And, Tyson struggled to find his range. He struggled to really do any damage to Lennox Lewis throughout. Okay, Dan, take us through round 3, mate.
Round 3, we've seen very, very similar things. I think that the biggest difference for me was that Lennox, I think he's got so many warnings from the referee in that second round. He rather than getting in that tie clinch, he was putting his arms out wide, to show that he wasn't trying to hold on. And then he was touching his jab in. Rather than do a stiffer jab, it looked like he was just pouring the jab to try to not allow those engagements, because I think those warnings must have been playing on his mind a little bit and was worried about getting a point deducted. So he was really trying not to aggravate the referee. I felt like he must have felt like he was up against Tyson and the ref, because the ref was always on Lennox Lewis. And I don't think Lennox Lewis fought dirty at all. Okay, there was a little bit of leaning going on, but that's got to be the body compositions that cause that. That the height difference is so apparent. Of course, at some points when it gets engaged in close, there's going to be some kind of leaning factor. So I felt like maybe that was playing on his mind a little bit. He's trying to keep the referee happy as well as trying to concentrate on the fight. But I feel like touching that jab in, maybe prepping up something with that uppercut again. I think that was always on the cards at some point for Lennox Lewis. But another good round. I just felt like now Tyson was slowing up even more. Now it looked already at this stage that Tyson didn't have enough power to rock Lennox Lewis.
Yeah, the referee was frustrating for me because, like, of all the fights I've seen over the years, I didn't think that Lennox Lewis leaning on Tyson was excessive. I didn't think it was particularly, he wasn't like grabbing him and pulling him in to try and do it all the time. It was when Tyson was going in for to try and get in the pocket and getting close. He was just using, it was like a natural position for him because of the height difference. So it was a bit frustrating. The referee was very keen to put a stop to it straight away. And obviously later on in the fight, he does take a point away. What did you make of it all, Shane, that third round?
Very similar. In a sense, I believe that the referee would probably have been like that if he would have been warned about Lennox Lewis's holding and leaning before the fight, and it probably got into his head a little bit. You see, when they go to the fighters' dressing rooms and stuff like that, let's say I think it's about 45 minutes before the fight starts, and just to go over the rules of the night, like make sure like they've got the right equipment, etc., all of that stuff. He probably got in there and they probably all said about Lennox Lewis is leaning, because it's something that he has done a lot over his career, but he does it fine in the sense that like he does it when he has to. He doesn't go overboard with it. And I think you're right in saying that I don't actually think it was actually that bad, But if he's had it all evening, which he probably has, and even before he even got to the venue that night, he's obviously got it into his head, and that's just going to be one of the things that he always looks for. And also, like, I agree with what Danny said, and obviously I know you agreed with him as well, in the sense that style-wise, that's going to happen because where Mike has to get in close and get in tight, naturally, you're just going to come together, and that's the way that it's going to be. If Mike Tyson was the bigger man, it would be that way. It's just the way that the size difference works. And again, another, you just see Lennox getting more and more comfortable, the confidence growing through the fight. And I just think you start to see from this point onwards a fall in Mike Tyson in the sense that he loses belief in himself.
Well, funny you should say that. I've got a fight on in my other screen here just to remind me really, and I've just paused it now as they've come out for that fourth round, and Lennox Lewis gets up and marches to the front, to the middle of the ring, ready to start the round 4. And by the time he gets to the middle of the ring and the referee's ready to start, Mike Tyson's still sat in his chair or on his stool, and he's like slowly, almost reluctantly getting up. Now, I know we've talked about him being gassed and maybe stamina isn't a big, his strongest part of his game. But that, from a belief point of view, is not something that you'd necessarily associate with Mike Tyson, that he doesn't believe in himself or he doesn't, feel confident that he can go and finish a fight or get a knockout. And I think that's really clear by his body language that he was losing belief that he was going to be able to beat Lennox Lewis. So yeah, it's interesting that it was on the screen as you said it about him losing confidence. Round 4, Danny.
Yeah, round 4. I just felt like now Lennox was literally just using combinations. You see his right hand get really active with both uppercuts and hooks. He's using his jab well, going in with just 1-2s, double jab, cross. It looked like he was doing a bag work session in this fourth round. I think he felt it, that Tyson was no longer a real threat to him. Of course, it's always a puncher's chance that's in there, but weighing up all of that, I think he was now enjoying himself in there almost. He knew it was going his way. He knows that the fight is going to go more in his favor per round, and I think he was just really trying to open up more of his combinations and try to get a situation which would cause a knockdown.
Yeah, I agree with that actually, and to the point where there's where Tyson's trying to kind of clinch up, instead of leaning on him at certain points, this time Lennox Lewis actually shoves him away to try and hit him with a couple of combinations rather than leaning on him. And part of that's probably going to be because of the referees warned him about it several times, but it's also, I feel, that he now believes that he could finish the fight sooner rather than later.
Any of the leaning that did happen was obviously some sort of strategy in place. I don't think it was, the whole part of it, but certainly to take out some of the strength in Mike, and it done its job. It served its purpose, and now I feel like he was opening up with the combinations. Now he feels that he's no longer so dangerous.
Yeah, and what you did see in this round was when they did get in close, is Lennox Lewis actually hit a couple of uppercuts in the pocket, as opposed to what that was what Mike Tyson was trying to do. Shane, what did you make of the fourth round?
Very much the same. I just feel like you see, like I said in the third one, a very much more confident Lennox Lewis. Like you said, he doesn't have to lean as much. I feel like he knows that round is when everyone can really tell what way this fight was going. I don't even think Mike Tyson at this point had a puncher's chance, because I just felt like he didn't have anything really left in the tank to generate the power from. And you're starting to see, like a little bit like I said towards the end of the last round, Mike Tyson has lost a bit of belief in himself, that he doesn't really see a way out of this fight for himself either, with him coming out with the W is what I mean. And you start to see that, like you said, rather than holding, you're seeing Lennox unloading a few combinations of him as well. And it's just a start of the downfall in the fight, really, of Mike Tyson in that fight. And I think the fifth goes very much the same way as well.
Yeah, just towards the end of that fourth round, Tyson does hit like a big left hook, and he really loads up on the punch, and Lennox Lewis doesn't even flinch, which I think kind of goes along with what you were just saying there, whereby Tyson, because of his fatigue, belief, everything which goes with it, didn't didn't have the power that you'd necessarily associate with Mike Tyson. And then right at the end of the round, Mike Tyson ends up on his ass and he's down. The referee doesn't call it a knockdown, I don't believe. I think he says it's a stumble or whatever. Did you feel that, Dan, that was a knockdown right at the end of that round, fourth round, or did you think that the referee was right?
Yeah, I think it could have been, but he kind of lent on him. It kind
was
of
a weird
ruined
one,
Yeah. It's hard to know how they would truly see that, in terms of judges and refereeing. To me, I think it should, it was going to be a knockdown, but how do you see these things? You'd have to really ask an actual referee, an actual judge, how they see things like that.
Yeah, did you think that was a knockdown, Shane? Like right at the end, he kind of leans on him and hits him just after, but I wasn't quite sure myself.
At the end of the day, the rules of boxing is if the glove connects and you go down, and it's from a punch, at the end of the day, even if there's a bit of a shove on it, it gives given it a knockdown. That's just the actual. It's a very straightforward rule, and it's got to be straightforward because if you have ifs and buts, then it becomes a very hard rule to enforce and what a knockdown and what isn't. And essentially, I don't think he was knocked down from actually that, but it should be given as a knockdown based on what the ruling is. I think more than anything, you're just seeing an exhausted Mike Tyson. I don't think he was necessarily hurt. I don't necessarily think that. I think it's just more exhaustion than anything else. And but it's so essentially, yes, it's a knockdown if you're going off the rule book, which obviously you should do because it's the easiest way to make a decision on something. So, yeah, it's a knockdown, but I don't think he was knocked down because of the punch itself. I think it's the shove, and essentially
the shove that takes
if you're shoved over, it doesn't get counted as a knockdown. But if by the rules, it is a knockdown because you did get hit as well.
And and technically that's the first time that Tyson's head was ever put down in his career. Obviously, because the referee didn't call it as a knockdown, it's the one later in the fight which counts. What I noticed, so I'll take us into round 5. Like what I noticed about round 5 straight away is Tyson's trying to clinch up at every opportunity, which, again, goes into his belief, his confidence. But also, I think fatigue is massive for Tyson. And I got to say, like, I don't want to be disrespectful because I'm a massive fan of Mike Tyson. But in this fight and in this 5th round, it looks like a training bout for Lennox Lewis at points. He's just sat behind his jab and he's just picking his punches. Like he's decided the pace if he wants it to quicken up, slow down. He is just taking Mike Tyson apart. And like I agree with you, Shane. Like at this point, at this sort of early round 5, Mike Tyson's not under. He hasn't been hurt. He's not really busted up or anything. But I think from this point now is where you do start to see a bit of damage and a bit of blood where he is defending himself, but he's getting hit at will by Lennox Lewis. So go on, we'll switch it up a bit. Shane, what did you make of this 5th round?
Yeah, I just think round 5, more the same, in the sense that it's just like the whole fight, in a sense, other than the first, which we spoke about earlier, it goes in the same flow in the sense that, like, a very comfortable Lennox Lewis, the only one getting real success, Lennox Lewis. Obviously, Mike Tyson has his moments in a sense, but even the moments are not really meaning anything because when he does connect, he does land. Again, the power's not there because if you're exhausted, your legs have gone, and the power doesn't exist no more. Hence why he went down because like I said, he was exhausted. Legs weren't there anymore, which is where his power was coming from. Because Mike Tyson, when he really swings, it's from the legs, man. It's like really, really puts his all into every punch as well. And that's a lot of the reason why he exhausts. Because you can't, especially as a heavyweight, I don't really believe you can do it anyway, but as a heavyweight, you really can't punch like that. Because they've got to carry that weight around for them rounds, especially in championship fights. It's just not really possible to do that. And it's just more, again, the same, where he's getting caught in close. That's what surprised me more in the fight, I would actually probably say, that more than anything else, how unsuccessful Mike Tyson was getting in close. I thought he would have been able to work the body a lot better with Lennox Lewis and maybe try and slow Lennox's jab down and his feet down a lot more by doing that, but he didn't really even get that at all, any success there either. And it's just more the same. I just believe that, again, like I said, from round 3, that fight was lost and over, really. And it just capitalizes it even more in that round. which then goes on to foresee the finish, really.
Yeah, and I think if anything, Lennox Lewis had more success in the pocket and close in than where you, like you just said, you'd expected Mike Tyson to get some success there and to slow Lennox Lewis down.
The reason being that, though, there's a good reason for that. If you've got nothing left in the tank, on the inside is where you're going to be able to fire the most shots. Because obviously at range it's hard to fire shots off very fast. But if you're in close, it's easy. You can throw in quick combinations very easily. Now Lennox Lewis, who's still got a lot left in the tank at this point, is able to fire off shots very comfortably on the inside at a good speed as well, at a good pace, because it's a lot easier to fire the shots off there. If the other guy is gassed, which he was, he hasn't got a lot of left to give back on the inside, and now he's just there to be hit on the inside. If you're on the outside, you can't really throw a lot of shots. Like you can't throw an uppercut, for example, on the outside and stuff like that. You have to come in, getting close, and this is where you fire the shots from. And that's why he had a lot more success. It doesn't mean he's a better inside fighter than Mike Tyson. It's just the fact that he used the game plan perfectly and then was able to beat Mike Tyson at his own game because he made sure he got him exhausted first.
Yeah, it's in some ways I find it not sad, but like it's frustrating, like we discussed at the start, because we would have all liked to have seen a really motivated and focused Mike Tyson take on Lennox Lewis in this form to really see a classic fight. And like I said, I feel like at some points it looks like Lennox Lewis is almost in a sparring session, just working that jab. And as you watch him as he leaves the 5th round, he's got a swagger in his step because he knows this. If he doesn't do anything stupid, it's job done. Danny, take us through your thoughts for round 5 and then take us into round 6 as well, mate.
Sure. Round 5, I thought that round 4 where he was hitting all the combinations, he was getting right hand happy. Obviously, that takes a lot of energy to do so. We're now getting to the middle sector of the fight, heading towards. And I feel like that tired Lennox a little bit, not in a way where you saw any fatigue, but the difference between round 4 and round 5 for me was that you saw the jab coming into effect a whole lot more. It's like he wasn't firing off as many right hands. He was happy just to stay on the outside and grind away at Mike Tyson and just score another round. He wasn't head hunting with that right hand as much. But also I think that he kept it at range more with the jab and not throwing so many right hands, partly because you've got to try and predict what the other corner might be saying. And you've got to think to yourselves, well, the other corner got to be saying, look, you've got to, exactly what Shane was saying, work in close, work the body, try and take something out of Lennox's game. And if you know that for Mike Tyson to sort of stand a chance and come in close, you want to keep him away. And I think he stopped Mike Tyson being able to try to get hold of a strategy that might lead to something. So he just kept it long and kept it simple and kept it simplistic, because it's just another round in the bag and another round that's taking more out of Mike Tyson than it is Lennox Lewis. Round 6, I just saw very much similar to round 5. Just looking back at mine. Oh yeah, he started firing off a lot of 1-2s. So it was really, really simple. He knew his jab was landing. He would go 1-2, 1-2, time again. And you see Lennox Lewis's jab landing on the forehead constantly and driving Tyson's head back. That jab now was becoming a weapon. He was getting confidence to throw straight 1-2s, which is really simple, and digging in the odd uppercut as well. It was now looking really uncomfortable for Mike Tyson. It was just a case of now for me, was he going to get to the end of the fight or not? It wasn't a case of can Tyson get back into it anymore.
Yeah, I felt like Lewis really smelt blood now. He really felt like he could finish it at any time. He nails a couple of really big right hands after some jabs and some good combinations. And Tyson, whilst he doesn't look rocked in a fight-ending way, his legs do start to look jelly-like, shall we say. He is rocking about a bit. His hands are low. His punches are wild as well. He's lost the kind of the technique which you saw earlier in the fight. He's almost like stumbling about a bit, that balance I was talking about. Shane, what did you sort of take from round 6 and then sort of take us into round 7, mate, as well?
Do you know what I think about round 6? I just see Lennox Lewis is a much bigger puncher from range than he is on the inside, right? And I just see a little bit like what Danny was saying. It's almost like Lennox is more setting himself up for the finish now. He knows that this fight is going. He knows how this fight's going to end up, and it's almost like you can see he's just pinging Mike's head back, and it's almost like he's going to set himself up for the big right hand. That's almost what he's setting himself up for, and and that's obviously what does come 2 rounds later, and that's what you can just see. He's just setting up for the finish. He's working it out how he's going to finish him, and that's just what it looks like he's doing from that round. And he adds a bit more into that in the 7th as well. But yeah, that's what it looks like. Just controlled, very one-sided again, very comfortable. I actually, at this point, I'm very surprised that Mike Tyson's corner didn't decide to pull him out, to be honest. So I think now he's starting to take unnecessary punishment. You're starting to, you've got to start asking yourself questions. How is my guy going to win this fight? What can he pull out? Yeah, obviously Mike Tyson is a big puncher, so you would always give him that live chance, a puncher's chance. But at this point, he is no longer a puncher because, like I said before, the power is not in the legs no more. He's just showing that he's a tough guy in there at this point at the time, because most fighters are. They're very, obviously, big egos. They're not going to quit. They want to go out on their shields. And that's almost what it's looking like for Mike Tyson at this point. And this is where it comes down to having a good corner, a good team around you that genuinely care about you. As much as Mike Tyson's never going to want to be pulled out of that fight, and I'm sure if he did, he would have gone mental. But at the end of the day, he's taken unnecessary punishment now, in my opinion. And this would have been a very good chance for Mike to have been pulled out of the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, just as you were saying that, I was watching the corner talk to Mike Tyson. He looks dishevelled. His nose is all busted up. The ice in like his temples on both sides where he's taken some big shots. And they showed a replay of some of the shots from round 6. And he took 2 massive shots to behind the ear. And you're right. Like I'd said about, it's like a sparring session for Lennox Lewis. And I meant in terms of like the work that Lennox Lewis is having to do from a defensive point of view. But that doesn't mean by any means that he's not punching very, very hard. And he's nailing, he's, as the fight's going on, those shots are getting cleaner because Tyson's hands are getting lower and he's becoming less effective in his defense of the shots. And I agree with you. I think that round 6-7 is where, if that corner really, really cares for Mike Tyson, they should at least consider, they should at least be thinking, right, does my guy need to keep getting smashed around the head, around the face, or is this the time? Not saying that they should have pulled him out, but I think they should have been at least considering it. Danny, what did you make of round 7, and just take us into round 8 then, mate, as well?
Round 7 was a lot of pouring jabs. He was like tripling them up, even doing quadruple jabs. I mean, I don't know whether they'd even score as his jabs. They was literally just touching his forehead just so he could line up that piercing drive-through of a crosshand. I felt like he was loading up that crosshand and just getting that left shoulder forward with the jab so he can load up that right shoulder of his, really digging those shots in now. He's really trying to hurt Mike now. And rather than trying to hurt Mike with any combination, which would take a lot of effort, he was merely touching that jab in and being efficient, keeping all that energy for that right cross. It didn't get to land in super clean, but it was just making you wonder whether one of those punches, if they did hit home, whether it had knocked Mike on his ass. Really dominant round, and this was one of the rounds where really the only thing I saw Tyson do was land a counter jab at times, but there was just absolutely nothing on it. His head rolling had gone to a nigh on stop. His head was just there. He's standing in front of him. His footwork had gone. This was looking ugly, and I actually agree with Shane. I think this would have been a round that Cornerman should have perhaps stepped in and said, look, no, this is going nowhere other than down a dark alley. Let's just stop it. Let's just save his grace. But they allowed him to carry on another round. And I think he was just tired and done for. Rather than it being a complete knockout, he just had nothing to give. He got given that standing count, didn't he?
Yeah.
Around about I think there's about a minute and a half left. And I think Lennox Lewis just knew then. He knew just to go all out. He started laying into him, and it was just looking really ugly. And yeah, it was game over. What can you say? I just think this was a nearly perfect strategy from start to finish for Lennox Lewis. He took the energy out of Mike Tyson. He kept himself safe in those early rounds. He lent on him. He tired him out. The centre portion of the rounds, he started to prep up some damage on him and to stop any strategy changing that Mike Tyson might have been able to go to. And once he squashed that, once Tyson was a sitting target, he was started opening up on him, got that count put against him, and then tasted blood and went on to the finish. Absolute great fight by Lennox. Possibly his greatest ever performance.
Yeah, I think we talked about whether Tyson was fully focused, motivated, etc. But at the end of the day, Lennox Lewis's performance was exceptional, and we talked about the coaches maybe should have stepped in, and just coming straight into that round 7. Mike Tyson's right eye is closed. He takes some massive shots, and then you get a big knockdown. After the standing count to finish it. Dan, you talk us through what you thought at the end, and I'll just...
Yeah, then, like I was saying, Lennox, once he got that standing count, because Tyson nearly dropped to his knees with some of those uppercuts. He nearly went down.
Yeah, man.
And it was good. It was good that the referee stepped in to give him that count. But I think that was a good call to stop the fight there and then. But
on the standing count, you mean?
Yeah, I think Tyson had enough by then. He was absolutely done for. I think it should have been waved off. But he did go on a little bit longer. He took a few more shots, and it was
some
good
big
night.
shots he took as well.
Yeah, unnecessary as well.
Head trauma. Shane, what did you think of that closing round finish? Everything.
I mean, it's a shame in a way, really. Like, I was never a big Mike Tyson fan, but even I didn't like to see him get handled in that kind of way. And it's you really have got to look at people's team, like I was saying a bit earlier. But I just want to add a bit more into this, in the sense that anyone who's been through a training camp of a fighter, you've seen what they put in and whatnot, and you have their best interest in heart. Your job is to look after your fighter and have their best interest at heart. Whether it's what they want, but it's what you have got to do, what is the right thing to do. The way that they allowed that fight to go on to the 8th round is, in my opinion, disgusting. What he then had to go through in that round is disgusting as well. And you have to say, peach of a shot from Lennox, which ended up, even though they say it was a bit of a shove as he was going down, it wasn't.
No, he had a big shot.
Completely out of it. If anything, thank God he shoved him, because if he hit him again, I don't know how that would have ended up.
Yeah.
But so out of it, a very big cut around his eye as well.
His eyes was closed, wasn't it?
And it's just, and it was. I'm actually more shocked that it took to the 8th round, because after the 5th, I really thought it could go any second in these next 2 rounds. So somehow made to the 8th, and it was over. But thank God it was. I didn't want to see another round or another 30 seconds of that, because it was one-way traffic, and he was just getting hurt in there. Man, these heavyweights punch so hard, especially at that level. The accuracy, the punch, the time, and everything. It's just, and you're taking clean off someone that could do that fight all over again at the same pace, and it's not good, man. It's at the end of the day, it was, and that's when you really start to tell yourself this is the end of Mike Tyson as a fighter, because obviously, like I did say, he did go on a 6 to 7 fight winning streak, I believe, against second-tier opposition. So then it gives you a bit of belief that maybe he can do it at the top level again. But then he's gone back in there against an elite fighter, got dominated basically from the first bell to the last, and got battered along the way. And it just goes to show that this is the end of the fearful Mike Tyson, really.
Yeah. Do you think, Shane, that it went as far as it did in terms of how deep it went into the rounds because of Lennox Lewis's character? Because he is a really chilled, calm. You never really hear him shout. You don't ever see him get emotional. Do you think it's because everything he does is really sure-footed? I get the sense that everything he will do in life is very well thought out. Do you think he's just, because of his personality being so safe, he does everything safe. Although he gets the job done, he does it in such a sure-footed way. He wants to give no chance of a slip-up.
He is. You're right. 100%. Lennox Lewis is a very laid-back man. He's what you would call a gentleman. He is, the word. Even I've interviewed him a few times, and even then, then absolute gentleman, even though the guy is one of the most famous boxers of all time, very financially placed, one of the few boxers we can say that about. And he's just an all-round gentleman. He doesn't get involved. At that point, Lennox Lewis is very experienced as well. And he just doesn't get involved and he doesn't need to. I think maybe the first round, we saw a little bit of him getting involved too much when he didn't have to. But he's a guy that would really follow the instructions of your trainer. He will act into what they say. You can always use him as like a controller. It's almost like a computer controller. He's the instructions he gets given is what he will enforce in the fight as well. Because the manual shoot, I mean, if he is telling you something to you, you do it. He knows what he's talking about, you know. So, yeah, very much from what Danny said. Yeah, very much knows how to keep his emotions intact. There have been times when we've seen that he hasn't. I mean, against Hasim Ratman, he let his emotions get into the fight. Hasim Ratman in the build-up, in the first fight, obviously, I'm talking about, that Hasim Ratman questioned Lennox Lewis' sexuality because at the time there was a lot of rumours going around about Lennox Lewis being bisexual and all this. And he used that to his advantage because he knew that Lennox was under pressure a lot from the media about it. It was going around. And being a boxer at that time, heavyweight world champion, you're an icon around the world, like especially as a heavyweight as well. If you get considered to be gay or anything like that at that time, that would just be, would look at you in a completely different way. And Hasim Ratman knew what to do to get under Lennox's skin, and he played that game, and it worked for the first fight. He caught him with that, I think it was peach left hook, which knocked out Lennox Lewis out cold. And yeah, but this fight very much, apart from the first round, but even then, Lennox still won it. So I feel like he did remotely get under Lennox's skin into the first round, but after that, very controlled. But that's just Lennox for you in every sense of the word. He is very much a gentleman, very much relaxed. At the end of the day, he sees boxing, it's a business rather than personal. And it is, and that's the way that it should be. Yeah. He's there to fight, to do his job, and that's it. It shouldn't be personal. And that's the way that he saw it.
Cool. So that was Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. So I know, Shane, you joined us for the boxing this week, and you're going to shoot off now, aren't you, while we talk some MMA to spend some time with your lovely lady. So you have a good evening, my friend, and I'll speak to you very soon, Shane. Cheers for joining us, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Good chat, and take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Good meeting you, Shane.
See you then.
Okay. So we're going to talk a bit of MMA now, and so we're going to go. I think we'll go with the Jack Shaw part number 4. Right. So we watched Jack Shaw versus Alexandros Germolitos, which was the Cage Warriors Academy show from the Wales, God's country, Danny, God's country.
Yes.
And it was only 2 minutes long, but it was still very, very interesting. Because you had Jack Shaw looking very confident, still looks mega young at this point. He still is young, but he looks particularly young at this point. And he goes in for a takedown straight away, and Alexandros stuffs it straight away. He stops it, and then he does like a hip toss for, it's probably not called that to you, but to me, it's a like a judo hip toss. To Jack Shaw, and you see Jack Shaw get taken down for the first time in his professional career. So, I'd imagine if I'd have been watching that live and I didn't know that he had won, I'd have been like, oh, here we go. There's a bit of a test for him. The test didn't last long because it was not long before he got himself out of the position that he found himself in. And he wins with the rear naked choke. And I thought the rear naked choke actually was fantastic because he kind of puts it on, and the guy tries to stand up. He tries to tries to sort of flick him over the front of him to get him off, and he just remains calm and still. He's locked it in tight. And actually, when the guy tries to sort of flick him over the front of him, and he goes off to the side as if he's going to topple off his back, and he almost locks it in tighter, so the guy has to stand up to try and get out of it, and that actually helps Jack Shaw even more then, because he's obviously he gets centralized again into the position. So it was very, very clever, very good. Very impressive again, mate. What did you think?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't very long, but there was a lot of interesting things that happened. Jack Shaw makes no secret of what his intentions are. He wants to shoot in, get you on the ground. He wants to overwhelm you with submission attempts and ground and pound. He very much tried to do the same thing and got his way in the end, but it wasn't so straightforward for him. Like you say, he did get hip tossed, and this is because he shoots in so much down the centre line. He drives forward because he likes to get people against the fence, because this is where he's had his success. So he's just repeating the pattern that's got him the success previously. He's doing the same thing, but what happened this time was he couldn't get him down and keep him down. Alexandros got up, and then he charged into him again, which opened him up to have the angle changed and get hip tossed. But the only issue with a hip toss is, as much as it can score a lovely looking takedown, it's not judo or anything. It does give you a lack of control on the ground. And Jack Shaw, if you don't control a lot of key elements, he's going to wiggle out and counter the position. That's exactly what he did. So Alexandros got the hip toss. There was a lot of space between the hips. Jack Shaw was able to turn up on him and start pressurizing for that takedown again. The only other little difficulty that Jack Shaw got himself stuck in with was the fact that he got his head stuck down really low as well with the takedown. When he was shooting in, he shoots in with his head really low down on the hip, and that got his head stuffed by Alexandros's body, and that stops any switch and change of takedown attempts and stops any drive. So that was a little lessons that he would have taken away from that to perfect his way. It would have definitely evolved the way he approached fights in the future. But he got on the back, and when he got on the back, he just kept pushing for that rear naked choke. He tried some really interesting linkages with the legs. He went from having two hooks on the standing back position to then having two hooks with feet crisscrossed, which was a little bit unusual, which perhaps give him a little bit of stability there. But what you'd normally see with that situation is someone drive one leg a lot more deeper and they hang off to the side. But he chose to keep really central. But they are of lighter weight, and that's more feasible for them to do. And he got a really good choke. I do think that Alexandros was definitely a step up in competition. You saw that he had something to actually throw back at Jack Shaw. But Jack Shaw, he just outgunned him at the end of the day. It looked like a shotgun up against an Uzi. A shotgun's all well and good, but you got two attempts. That's what we saw from Alexandros. Then he didn't even have a chance to reload his gun. Jack Shaw just kept throwing that Uzi shots at him and overwhelmed him and got the kill.
Oh yes, he was. He's very, very impressive, and I'm really enjoying looking back at these fights. They haven't been very long so far. Next week's is double the time. It's a bit longer. And I was just looking there. He's Cage Warrior. He goes on a tear through Cage Warriors. He does get a couple of decision. He has to go to. He goes to a couple of decisions, and some round 3 victories later on. But for the time being, the next fight is 4 minutes 46, and then when he fights a Cage Warriors 87, it goes to the 3rd round. So,
oh wow,
that'll be a really interesting one. So next week, in part 5, we'll be looking at his bout versus Matea Galibiati versus from Cage Warriors 87, which he wins by KO. Interestingly enough.
Oh wow! I really look forward to seeing that one.
So that's Cage Warriors 87, and he gets a title shot at Cage Warriors 97. So we've got a few parts, which it's interesting. It's just a little segment for us to have a look at him. And I appreciate the gentleman who sent in the request. And as I always say, guys, particularly when we've got no current stuff to cover, if there's any particular boxing matches or MMA bouts or a particular fighter you would like us to look at, bit by bit, once we finish with Jack Shaw, we're happy to do so. Gaz has asked if we will watch next week Lennox Lewis versus Evander Holyfield 1, and then the following week or the next time there's no current shows, look at Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis 2. However, next Sunday, there is current UFC. And we will be joined by UFC star Jack Shaw, which will be interesting because we can get his view on his own fight at Cage Warriors 87. So that'll be kind of cool. So Jack's going to join us to break down the UFC card from the Saturday, and then I'll get him to hang around for the little bit which we do about him, and then he might hang around for the retro stuff. I don't know, but But once we next get a weekend where there's no current UFC or boxing, we will watch Evander Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis 1. And I might get Shane back on actually because he's got a lot of boxing knowledge, a lot of contacts within boxing, being a manager himself. So I might when we do those, I might get Shane back on to have a chat. But just to finish off the show, mate, we'll go with the UFC number 8, which was an interesting show. So the alternate bout, which did they show the alternate? I don't think they did.
I don't think we did see those. No.
So that was the alternate bout was Sam Adkins versus Keith Mike. And yeah, again, of course, as is tradition, we had to have Sam Atkins step in for Paul Valerian's later in the tournament, which I don't think we've had one of these tournaments where someone hasn't had to be replaced at some point, which is unfortunate. But at least this time there was only the one alternate required. Okay, so we had the first bout. It was not a long one. We had the debut or UFC debut of Don Fry, which I was really, really excited to see because he's one of the first MMA fighters, which I was really kind of a fan of. And he defeated Thomas Ramirez via KO in 8 seconds.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about this guy. His opponent was massive because the show was called David and Goliath, and for good reason. All the first matchups were done with opposite ends of the weight spectrum. And I think by the time they got to the final, it was 50-50 between the big guys and the small guys, wasn't it? But Don Fry made real short work. He sort of went in with a jab that got the big man's head reeling back. He stumbled off balance. And because he's such a big guy, I think 400 pounds plus, he couldn't regain his balance and fell with his head against the fence. And Don Fry followed up. And it was game over straight away. It was an easy knockout victory for Don Fry, perfect for a knockout tournament to win in such fashion. Yeah,
it was brutal, mate. It was brutal.
Yeah, it was
beautiful. I just made up a word. It was so good. Next up was Paul Valerians versus Joe Moreira, and this was the first time we had a decision within the tournament structure.
That's right. Yeah, they were 10 minutes long, wasn't it?
10 minutes, right? Yeah, so they're 10-minute fights, and it went to unanimous decision with Paul Valerian's winning it, which was, interesting.
Yeah, but the fight wasn't actually interesting. I found it quite boring. Moreira was just a grappler, but a good grappler, but was unable to get such a sizable opponent to the mat. He was unable to get Paul down. Paul was quite experienced at this point. We'd seen him numerous times, and to me, he was winning it. Whenever Moreira engaged, he was able to spoil any takedown attempt and throw some uppercuts and hooks. And we're just doing the damaging shots. Really, Moreira, because of the size deficit, was spending most of his time backpedaling, and it just didn't look good. So I was not surprised, and that every judge gave it to Paul Valerians. It was frustrating to watch, though.
Yes, it was very frustrating. But Paul Valerians, obviously, is very experienced at this tournament format now. He's done a couple. Next up was Jeff Bollinger versus Scott Ferozzo. And this was, he won this via submission, guillotine choke after 9 minutes.
Yeah, this fight was more like it. This was actually a good fight. That Ferozzo was a bit like Tam Cabot, but rather than Tam Cabot was a good wrestler, but really wanted to do damage with his hands, sort of like beer brawling with haymakers, etc. Ferozo was like opposite. He wanted to do damage with his actual wrestling. Kept slamming Bolander around with suplex attempts, and it looked like it was not going to go Bolander's way at all. But being a proper athlete and being a skilled individual, he was able to use that to strategize to stay on his feet, get back to his feet, work some little choppy damage to Ferozo's face. They got pulled apart. This is one thing that they changed with regards to refereeing. If there was no action in a particular area, they would get parted and they reset. Ferozo just had to keep on trying to force Bolander against the fence, but each time he did so, he's receiving more and more damage. And each time that he entered in, was not only getting his face damaged, he ended up trying to hide his head away where it got caught a little bit too low. And Bolander was a really good submission guy, and he got that head down low. He started putting in that guillotine. And I think he almost went out, or he sort of half went out by the time he managed to tap. But that was a much more lively bout. It was really interesting to see like a real athlete who's skilled and a guy that's got good wrestling that's just brutally heavy and quite a short guy in the big schemes when you compare him to someone like Paul Verhoeven, who was 6'8". This guy was a real compact bit of fat that could wrestle some. I didn't think it was going to go Bolander's way with the first suplexes, but fatigue set in, and any opportunity for a submission, Bolander was clearly capable of putting it away, and he did.
Yes, this I definitely think he went out, mate. He he looked like he did. I was interested by Jerry Belinda. I don't remember. Have we seen him before?
No, we hadn't seen him at this stage.
No, and I'm pretty sure he goes on to win one of the tournaments later on in a couple of years. I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wins one of when they do it in weights. I'm sure he wins one. Next up was Gary Goodridge versus Paul Herrera. Gary Goodridge, obviously a big dude, super heavyweight and very capable kickboxer. Defeats Paul Herrera via KO elbows. Only 13 seconds to this one.
Yeah. It was just the size. Gary Goodridge comes always with mean intentions. I don't think he was a really good striker back then at this point, but they got clinched up. Paul Herrera just looked too small. He looked a little overwhelmed. He put up a little bit of a fight. He had his little moments, but he just didn't make enough of those moments. Gary Goodridge always overpowered him. And got the KO. Yeah, didn't last very long at all. Absolutely. A bit like Don Fry. Really, he got a really good start to the tournament. You want to get him out of the way quick. This one, he got out of the way quick.
Yeah, he did. And I think with this tournament format is it's the bet. These guys just want to get in and out as quick as possible, don't they? So the semi-finals were Don Fry versus Sam Atkins, which was the alternate, and you also had Gary Goodridge versus Jerry Bolander, which was a really interesting fight on paper.
Was a good one. Yeah, that was a good fight.
So we had Don Fry beat Sam Atkins in 48 seconds via a doctor stoppage, TKO, should I say?
Yeah, I think Sam Atkins was actually trying to tap before the point that it got stopped with a cut. The commentators did pick up on that. Was he tapping? It definitely looked like he was trying to tap to me. But yeah, Don Fry enters in. He sort of picks up an outside single on that leg and really tips him up and throws him down with relative ease. And Don Fry, if he feels that he can run someone out of there quick, he'll put the energy in to do such a job. And that's exactly what he done. He just went in and was aggressive from start to finish. I think he knew he had Sam Atkins' number. He knew this Atkins had nothing to offer Don Fry. It was another really nice, easy fight for Don. This is turned out to be a good evening for him.
Yeah, and not too difficult in terms of time spent in the cage. So for the quarterfinals and the semi-final, he spent 56 seconds in the cage,
Yeah.
which, you know, is ideal going into the
Yeah.
final.
Yeah.
The other semi-final was a bit more competitive. It was Gary Goodridge and Jerry Boland. Gary Goodridge picking up the win via TKO after 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't so straightforward for Gary Goodridge with this one. Jerry Ballender, as we know, he's got some skills, although he had a lot more difficult fight leading up to this one than Gary Goodridge did. So, you know, Jerry Ballender was going to be slightly fatigued compared to Gary, and Gary's obviously sizably bigger. So yeah, Gary got him down. I thought it was going to be a really quick fight once Gary got him down. He didn't get him down with anything pretty, just the fact that he's a bigger guy. It looked like he was going to be, you know, running the punches in really early, but he was unable to control that Jerry Ballender. But he's definitely got skills on the ground. This guy, he's definitely well rounded. He managed to switch out of there and get on top of Gary Goodridge, and was getting Gary Goodridge to eat some of his punishment. But Gary was so fresh and so big and strong. He really did look sizably bigger than Jerry, and managed to get back, stood up, managed to get Jerry back down, and he was stood up. And at one point he kneels on his head. It looked so uncomfortable. It looked really, really nasty. It just looked like the bigger man. Started raining down some punches, and the ref steps in to stop it. And so really, I think had it gone on, Ballender would have come away quite hurt and cut up.
Yeah. Uncomfortable is probably understating it a bit. And this was one of the ones which it didn't kind of go like this throughout the tournament, but this was one of the ones where the size difference and the really did show, because Gary Goodridge looked, you know, up to this point, I felt like he looked very, very good throughout, you know, in his quarterfinal and semi-final bout. So the final is Don Fry versus Gary Goodridge. Don Fry wins via submission to 2 minutes 14 into the bout. Don Fry just looked like a beast. I got to be honest. He just looked so good in every aspect of his game, really.
Yeah. Even his striking, although he's not technically great in today's terms, you know, he knew how to throw his hands, and he knew about range. And I think with that combination of having game hands and that wrestling capability, it was a little bit too much for Gary Goodridge. Gary Goodridge, you got to remember, at this stage was not the well-versed fighter we knew that he developed into. He still had huge holes in his game, and Don Fry at this stage could really expose that, and he did. You know, it really didn't make difficult work for him overall. Actually, they ended up fighting again, didn't they, in Pride? And Gary Goodridge had really started developing his striking game, and he knocked Don Fry out with a nasty head kick. Because, like I say, Don Fry, you know, it's not like a proper pedigree striker by any stretch. He has his kind of hands wayward. He was always a roided up guy. I don't think there's any secret to the fact that he was abusing some help along the way to his successes, but it was the way it was back then, and so he couldn't hold a tight guard, and he held his hands quite loosely in that Pride fight, and Gary Goodridge threw up a perfect head kick, and he's a big dude and explosive, and he knocked Don Fry out really badly. Just a bit of added information, but Don Fry on that night though, with this UFC, was just a talent too much for Gary Goodridge. And won by punches. No,
got nailed. I think it's fair to say. And you're right. Gary Goodridge didn't have the overall skills to deal with Don Fry at this point. He just didn't. You know, and he admits that in the interview after the fight. Also, he says, "I just don't have the ground defense and the stamina and the all round fight game." To me, I think, well, if you knew that, why didn't you try and improve them before the tournament? But I think it's not always as easy as that, I suppose.
I think he was training in all those elements, you know, by the time this UFC come about. But you know, they're still early into learning this new skill set. And once you learn them in the gym, it takes a little while for it to come out over into your into your real fight scenarios. With Gary Goodrich, he was showing some little advancements. If you have a look at that Paul Herrera fight that we discussed, it didn't last very long at all. He actually showed some nice little ground skills there because he caught him in like a crucifix position, didn't he, with his leg and arm, and then elbowed him unconscious. So he was definitely getting skills about him, but they developed a little later on, and we saw what Gary Goodrich was capable of later on in his career.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing seeing him come back. I'm sure he'll be in another couple of UFCs.
Yeah, he was an active fighter.
I might have a little look at their fighting Pride as well later on. Okay, so to finish us off, we're going to have a look at Ken Shamrock versus Kimo Leopoldo, which was for the Super Fight Championship. We over the last couple of tournaments, we've seen Ken Shamrock really cement himself as kind of the guy to beat. He's no longer taking part in the tournaments. He's the Super Fight Championship holder. He basically seems to just take on the winners from the year before, from what I can gather, generally. So does that mean we'll see Ken Shamrock versus Don Fry in the next one? Well, we'll find out in just a second.
Maybe so. Yeah.
No, well, I could say now we don't. We see the Dan Severn rematch. But go on. Take us through the Ken Shamrock.
Everyone will know what Chemo's all about as well. Super aggressive, really big dude. I think he's a little bit bigger all round than Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock's got the wrestling capabilities though, and was able to get Chemo down. Had a little time in close and open guard, then half guard. But when he gets side control, because Chemo is such a muscular dude, it must be hard to try and pin down tight on him. He was able to reverse Ken Shamrock over and have a little bit of top play himself. And when someone like Chemo's on top, he's on top to do damage and try and put you out. He's not going to try and do a pretty submission. He's there to punch and elbow you and knee you and do damage. So it did mean it opened up a bit of space for Ken Shamrock to move and counter. And this is where you see his continuing development for his taste for leg locks. Clearly, he was doing some training out in Japan. Now I've trained out in Japan, and they're big on their leg locks. It's considered an old school style, but today it's all been modernized now. With all the no-gi grappling that you see. But nevertheless, Ken Shamrock was a step ahead of everyone with the leg lock game, and you saw it. He flipped over for Chemo's leg. Chemo looks a little lost. He really just has to use strength and power and aggression to try to defend it. It looked at one point he would get out, but no, he gets the leg locked. He just didn't have the skill. No, it was not to be. So really Chemo's undoing was the fact that when he did have a top position, the only way he was going to win is by opening the position to strike down at Ken. But Ken, when you give him space, he's going to be able to counter attack, and he did with that nice leg lock attempt. It was good.
Yeah, it was interesting. So the commentators called it an ankle lock, but Ken Shamrock called it a knee bar.
Yeah,
and you're calling it a leg lock.
Well, yeah, it was actually hard to see what it actually was because his body was kind of blocking the finish.
They didn't have all those multiple camera angles back in then.
No. And so what could have been the case is that he could have had a toe hold. It was hard to say what his finish actually was. But if Ken's saying it was, I didn't actually see the after interview or anything like that. If he's saying it was a knee bar, it was a knee bar that he got him with. But normally a knee bar, you see them have to really put their hips in to get the submission, which is why I thought it might have been a foot lock of some sort, because Chemo tapped quite quickly from the position, which normally means it's something to do with the ankle and knee, because of the
pressure,
the foot lock application. A knee bar. I think maybe Chemo knew the knee bar was going to come on. He didn't want to play no part in having his knee bust out, so he tapped out quite promptly, and so he should have.
Yeah, you don't want to be out for months, do you? Because you wrecked your ligaments.
I've hurt my knees numerous times. It's no fun. You never really truly get back to your original self when you do your knees, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. So next week we'll be talking the current UFC card, which I'll bring up in a minute. But we'll also touch on UFC 9, which is the first event that it doesn't feature the tournament format. However, it does get brought back for UFC 10 by popular demand. It's also it was on pay-per-view. So the card is main event is Dan Severn versus Ken Shamrock. And I'll warn you now, it goes to the decision, 30 minutes. Then we have Steve Nelmark versus Ty Bowden, which is a heavyweight. Cal Worsham versus Zane Frazier. So I don't know if they've got divisions at this point or whether it's still a free for all. Let me see if I can pick up one of these which have got the weights for both of them. Freestyle heavyweight. Oh, I can't. It doesn't seem to. Light heavyweight and sumo. No, there's no weight divisions either. So Cal Worsham versus Zane Fraser, Rafael Carino versus Matt Anderson, Mark Schultz versus Gary Goodridge, Mark Hall versus Koji Kitayo, and Don Fry versus Amaury Bititi.
Sounds like a lot of fresh names coming into the mix for that one.
Yeah, they're all new names. And then obviously the tournament after that is called the UFC 10, the tournament. And if I wanted to have a little peek of that because I got a feeling we're going to see some familiar names soon. But Don Fry's in that tournament, so that'll be interesting. Okay, so the next UFC card, which is next Saturday, is Tyrone Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. We got Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai. Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. And let's have a look. Who else do we got? Bring up the rest of the card. So should we do some quick predictions for the main card?
Yeah, let me actually get them up as well.
You get your pen and paper.
And let me have a little proper look because I only skimmed it quickly today. Obviously,
to be honest with you, I look at that card and I think, the main event looks quite interesting, and then I look at the rest of it and I'm a bit like,
it's not the most exciting card.
Yeah, and I wondered, should they have really put some of those fights from that last card, which like put the Cerrone fight, which was on the prelims, put that on this card. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have given some of those fighters an extra couple of weeks to prepare, but also just like make this card a bit better because they've gone from like a ridiculously stacked card to maybe, dare I say, a little underwhelming. Okay, so
I'm trying to can't get it out. Phone's so slow. Oh, go on. Just tell me the names and I'll.
Okay, so we've got a female bout to open the card, which is a strawweight bout between Hannah Seifers and Mackenzie Dern.
Oh yeah, I'm going to go Mackenzie.
You're going to go with Mackenzie, so we'll put you in. We'll put you in green, and I will go with Hannah Seifers. Why not? Just for the fun of the game. And then we have a lightweight bout between Roosevelt Roberts, that's a good name, and Brock Weaver.
Let's go Brock Weaver.
Okay, so I'll go Roosevelt because I like his name anyway, but I don't know a great deal about him.
I don't know much about him.
Brock Weaver rings a bell. I'll say that much. But so I'm red. And then we have a welterweight bout between Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez.
I'm going to go Kevin Holland.
I'm going to go Kevin Holland too.
Yeah.
And just got to write it down. Keep track so we can see how we did.
Yeah.
You won the last one, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I did.
And then we've got a ranked fighter. So we've got Augusto Sakai, who's ranked number 13, versus Blagoy Ivanov. And that is
a Ivanov, yeah.
Yeah, that's a heavyweight bout.
Yeah. Anyone with a name ending in V, they're going to be good fighters. All those Manovs, they're all good, aren't they? How do you even spell that?
Ivanov. So who you got?
I'm going to go Ivanov. Let's go with that.
I'm going to go for Sakai as the ranked fighter.
Yeah.
Why the devil not? And then we have the main event of Tyrone Woodley versus Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, is Tyrone Woodley going to come back new and refreshed? Burns is on a little bit of a roll. I think Burns has got more ways to potentially win, but can he force it his way? I'm going to go Gilbert Burns.
Ooh, I'm going to go Tyrone Woodley because I feel like Tyrone Woodley, one, is vastly underrated by people, and two,
definitely
I feel like he really needs the win.
He does, to put himself back up there.
So UFC 30th of May predictions. I don't think it is the 30th of May. I believe it's the Saturday before. If it is the 30th of May, then I'm going to have a problem with recording it because 30th of May is the Sunday. I have a show on the 1st of May, so we might have to do a live one on the Wednesday. But we're going to do that. I think we were going to do this one live anyway, weren't we? And we're going to do it a bit earlier, if you remember.
Right.
So assuming the gym is still closed and stuff, are you still okay to do that?
Sure.
So that'll be it'll be a 6 o'clock start, and it will be a live review show. But look out on our social media, A.C.E Podcast Nation social media, to confirm the date, because on some websites it says it's on the 29th of May, the event, and other websites it says it's on the 30th, which is the Sunday. So we'll just have to double check that and keep an eye on it. But yes, check us out.
Okay.
Facebook.com/AceCast Nation, Twitter and Instagram at AceCast_Nation. Danny is not on any of them. And you can also help us as a series and as a channel by subscribing to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Also, check out Shane's social media. He's got some good stuff and some really great interviews coming up, including one with Tyson Fury, which I believe go on his Instagram page, which I will link in the description below. And we will see you next week for another episode of the Danny Batten Fight Show. It will be live. It will be 6 p.m. and it will either be on the Sunday or it will be on the Wednesday. So keep an eye out on the social medias that I just mentioned, and get ready for a live show with not just myself, but also former Cage Warriors champion Danny Batten, but also UFC fighter and former Cage Warriors bantamweight champion, Mr. Jack Tank Shaw. Thank you for joining me, Danny.
Pleasure, Si.
As always, mate, always a pleasure. Thank you again to Shane for joining us. I really enjoyed some of his analysis, and he's a good guy. I did a podcast with him the other day, which is going to be out on Friday. So you're going to get a double whammy of Shane this week. And it was a real fun show. And I really got on with him, and it was good stuff. And cool. We'll see you next week, guys. Cheers, Dan.
Champion, welcome.